Hello, my name is Jamin Bassette. This is my review of the Seoul Conference on Cyberspace for 2013. This was held here October 17th through 18th. Of course, with reception on the 16th at the COEX Center in Seoul, South Korea. I was one of the Cyber Buddies, which is the nickname they gave to 100 volunteers. Most of us were students, but people from all walks of life. Some were guys that were just very interested in SNS and things like that. 100 of us got recruited by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and they nicknamed us the Cyber Buddies. And our job was to do retweets and to talk about and try to deliver messages and thoughts on everything involving the Cyber Conference. And this was all the way leading up to it. About 3 months before the conference was held, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade started trying to get the word out, trying to get people talking about it. And that's where we came in. We came on about 2 months before the actual conference happened. And our job was just to get people talking about it. And there's lots of different ways we could do it. But it was all to lead up to this point, the actual conference itself. And I got very lucky. I got a chance to go. Not everyone got a chance to do that. Since it was held on a Thursday and a Friday, some people had work obligations. Some people had school obligations. So not everyone got a chance to go, unfortunately. I was fortunate enough, since I'm a graduate student, I was able to work it around my schedule. So I was able to attend not only the youth conference, which was held at Yonsei University, but I was actually able to attend the whole this conference. Everything except for on the 16th, the reception. I wasn't sure if I was allowed to go or not. In retrospect, I think I was allowed to go to everything save for the dinner. I think the dinner was invitation only. But I was able to go to the opening ceremony, which was actually really great. So I think I'll start there. So the opening ceremony, the first speaker was unnamed. If you look at the official program, they didn't have a name for the first speaker, and the reason why is because actually it was a very special speaker. It was the president of South Korea, Park Geun-hye, and this was actually kind of a treat. This is the first time I got to see her. I actually got to see and meet President Lee Myung-bak, which was the previous president. I actually got a watch that says Lee Myung-bak on it. I don't wear it around too much anymore because I'm afraid of it getting dirty or broken. It's actually a really nice watch I'm looking at right now. It's kind of off the topic. So we got to see the president. That was a really nice treat. It's good to see her come out here and be part of it. She gave her speech in Korean, which I thought was really interesting because I know her English is actually really good. When she went to the U.S., she spoke primarily in English. So I don't know if she spoke in Korean this time, since everyone else, regardless of their actual English capabilities or lack thereof, spoke in English for the entire conference, although they had translations in multiple languages. I got a list right here: Arabic, Chinese, English, French, German, Indonesian, Italian, Japanese, Malaysian, Mongolian, Polish, Portuguese, Russian, Spanish, Swedish, Thai, Turkish, and Vietnamese. Oh boy. Oh boy. It was actually a really, really diverse group. It was, the little episode here. At one point, one of the other cyber buddies was looking for me and said, "Oh, where are you at?" I'm like, "Can't you see me? I'm the guy with blonde hair and a blue shirt." And normally that makes me stand out in a crowd here in Korea, but not in this room. There's a lot of blonde-haired guys with blue shirts at this conference. So the other thing that happened there in the opening was they had representatives from several different countries, as diverse as Sweden, Israel, and they each got Malaysia. They each got a chance to come up and just give a quick 7-minute talk about what their country's objectives were for cyberspace. And I thought this was really interesting. In fact, if you only get a chance to watch one thing from this conference, I would make it that. It was just fascinating hearing these different countries and the representatives for these different countries have such different concepts of the idea of cyberspace and what cyberspace represented for them. Like Israel was talking about cyberspace in terms of defense and how the realities of their situation with Palestine has forced the country into both a defensive and offensive idea of cyberspace, and for them it's very much a security issue, as much even more so than economic or anything else. And then you had the guy from the UK, and when he talked about cyberspace, a lot of it was about cyber crime and things like that. And the guy from China talking about the economic value of cyberspace, but also the beating China, some of the diplomatic concerns and some of the oversight concerns with the internet. And so it was just really fascinating to hear the different countries' perspectives. Again, you can find all these conferences. You can find them in the link below. I'm going to link you to where you can see them video on demand on the website. And I highly recommend you see the opening. It's about a little over an hour and a half long. If you watch nothing else, watch this. After that happened, we had another opening portion. Is the vision for cyberspace, and this had various speakers as well, each speaking on again just some more of what they hope to get out of cyberspace. And this one was really interesting as well. They kind of go together. In fact, actually, there at the conference, there was no break. They just went one to the other. So if you have 3 hours to spare, I highly recommend you watch these back to back. Great perspective. The American speaker couldn't make it. It was actually supposed to be Secretary of State John Kerry. Probably for the best he didn't go. That's just this is my personal bias coming out there. But it was really interesting. Again, hearing from these different perspectives, I highly recommend watching this. After that was lunch, and then the next panel was on Beyond the Digital Divide Towards Global Prosperity. Talked a lot about the digital gap between the haves and have-nots, and that kind of brings me to the first thing from the conference that I didn't get from this, and what I didn't get from this was a solution. But regardless of whether you're from a developed country, developing country, there was consensus on we want to grow cyberspace in a way that does not widen the gap between the haves and have-nots, between the north and south. That's fine. That's great. No one is arguing against that point. What we're asking is, how do we do that? And I didn't hear a single very good answer. And Margaret Thatcher would tell you the best way to get equality for everyone is poverty. If the gap itself is really the biggest concern, you can close that gap all right by stymieing everyone. Send everyone back to the Stone Age. And of course, no one wants that, but no one really is offering a practical solution for a way that is going to close the digital divide, that's going to do it in a fashion that's not going to harm developed countries or handicap them. And considering that when you're talking about cyberspace, you're talking about the major players there, the biggest ones are individuals, civil society, the people that the people of the country, and businesses. And I don't like the idea of governments talking about finding ways to close that gap without talking about practical ways to do it that isn't going to affect people in that way. And unfortunately, we never really came up with a solution. Next was strengthening cross-border cooperation. Obviously, Northeast Asia, this is a huge issue, especially since when you look at the U.S. and you talk about the cyberspace concerns, most of it's economic with a little bit of criminal. The closest neighbors are obviously Mexico and Canada, and with them, the biggest thing with cyberspace is cutting down on the criminal element and then fostering economic development between the three. There isn't a lot of security concerns. We're not concerned about Mexico or Canada or the U.S. suddenly going to war with each other, or like there's being some kind of subversion effort or anything like that. That's not an issue. And you look at Europe, most specifically Western Europe, and it seems to be a similar case. The biggest thing is economic and criminal. So when you go to Northeast Asia, criminal is definitely an issue. Economic is always going to be an issue. But the biggest issue is security. The people to your left and to your right that you're trying to build up and you're trying to foster this coordination and cooperation with also happen to be the countries most likely to want to bomb you, out of existence. So it's just this really awkward relationship that is very European circa 1600s. It's it's just a situation that just not every country has, and it's something that's very unique to Northeast Asia, and it's something they've been trying to work out for a long time. And a lot of the talks of cooperation here talked about some of the conferences in the past that have been successful, Budapest and in London, and nothing really got done. A lot of talks happened, which is great. Not a lot of things got signed. So people are very optimistic about cooperation progress, but most of the people being optimistic and talking in optimistic terms are the ones from the West. There are the ones that don't have the same situation as exists here in Northeast Asia. So I was kind of a little disappointed in that one. Again, it's just because of the differences in what I wanted to get out of it, just because of my own stance here in Northeast Asia versus their own experiences and their own outlook on cooperation. So can't really blame for that. After that was the break, and then panel 1 and 2. I didn't get to see both panels, obviously, because I could only be physically in one or the other. And I haven't had time to go back and watch the other panel, which is economic growth and development. I'm probably going to watch it either tomorrow or Monday, depending how much time I got. I really want to see that one. Interested in that one, especially since the lead discussant is from. The lead discussant is from the Korean Information Society Developmental Institute. So I'm very interested in that. The one I did get to see was in cybersecurity. The three that I did get to see, cybersecurity, which is panel 2, panel 4, which is cybercrime, and panel 5, which is international security. There's a lot of similar through lines, a lot of them. The big things are, of course, they talked a lot about cooperation. They talked a lot about transparency and discussion. Another big thing that came up, though, was the idea of multi-stakeholder. This is a term you heard a lot. In fact, probably the best moment at the conference, in my opinion, this was panel 5, international security. We had the ambassador from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Russia. And you also had on the U.S. side from the Cyber Issues and Office of Security Department of the State, and then you had another individual from Australia. They came the closest to verbal blows we got there. Everyone, of course, remained very, very civil. These are all professionals here, but the way they talked about each other, it made you so uncomfortable. The U.S. would talk about the importance of a secure and open cyberspace, and then go to Russia, and Russia would have these really backhanded compliments, not backhand compliments, but they'd say things like, "We too are concerned about the importance of a secure cyberspace, but we're also very concerned about countries and about governments that'll try to monitor." And it'd be like, "Oh, he wants to say PRISM, but he hasn't said it yet." There's a lot of back and forth, and you could definitely tell that for Russia, security was a huge point of that, not just from the governmental standpoint, but he kept on using the words stable. He wanted a stable internet, and he believed that even more important than freedom on the internet is the guarantee to people that there's an internet there for them, and sometimes that calls for cracking down on some freedoms, because you didn't use the term cracking down, but it's kind of the gist of it, versus the U.S. side, which when it talked about cracking down, it was all external rather than internal. But they were saying the same things, but in a very different strokes. Of course, for the U.S. perspective, any kind of crackdown internally on internet would be a violation of freedom of speech, and of course, human rights issue. Russia very sensitive on human rights issues because they have a very different interpretation of human rights and democracy. And so for them, external crackdowns seem like a violation of international sovereignty. So it was really interesting how they both were talking about the dangers of cracking down and the need to keep the internet open, but then they were both talking about how cracking down and keeping the internet not open in some ways is important, just in just in very different circumstances. So that one was very interesting. It also had someone from I want to say, here, let me look at this quickly so I don't get this wrong. China, yes. A associate research fellow for the China Institute of International Studies. And so that was really interesting to also hearing the Chinese perspective. Actually, China would be falling in a very similar vein to Russia on their views there of security, but to an nth degree, even more so than Russia. So that one seemed to turn out pretty good. If you could only watch 3 of these, that third one I would recommend is International Security. That's panel 5. So if you're keeping score at home, the opening ceremony, plenary session 1, and then panel 5, by far my favorites of this. Very, very good stuff. Very good stuff. So a couple more things that I really liked. I really liked the whole setup there. In addition to the conferences and everything else they had going on, they actually had private businesses who were there showing off some technology. And of course, you've probably been seeing some of the pictures up talking about that. And there was a lot of really cool tech there. My only complaint about those is almost none of them had anything to do with cyberspace or security or development, or any of the things on the actual docket that we're going to talk about. A lot of it was like Microsoft showing off the tablet. Yeah, thanks. No Koreans are interested in the Microsoft what do you call Surface. No one's interested in the Microsoft Surface. Sorry, but there was some pretty cool stuff there. The theme there was mostly information technology. So that's the closest connection you had there to actual cyberspace. But because of that kind of gave me a signal that some of the bill for this had been footed by them. To cut down the costs to the actual government sending their people here, which I appreciate. I don't think the government should get a free meal ticket, but when the government pays for things like this, it's off of taxpayers' money, and so it's always nice when they get private businesses involved in cutting down some of the costs. And also another thing I liked here is they really did get private businesses here. One of the other panels. This was the one for cybercrime. Another really, really great panel. They actually got the chief security officer from the National Australia Bank. Probably my favorite person there. When it just came to what he was saying personality-wise, just really, really interesting guy talking a lot about these issues from the private industry perspective, and that's something I wish there was some more of. For each of the panels, there was 1, at most 2 people from the private sector. Almost all of this was government, which is a real shame because this would have been a great opportunity to get some of that cross-dialogue going. But he was just talking about, one of the anecdotes here, he talked about how the bank, they had a huge denial of service attack. And when they finally tracked down to the IP address that was being used to attack them, it was a air conditioning unit in Utah at a university. And so he talked about how, he's like, I see smart TVs, and smart TVs are everywhere in Korea, and I see smart refrigerators. And then most people, they're just like, oh, convenience items. Oh, I can control this from my phone. But when he sees them, he sees potential avenues for attack. And I thought that was such a really interesting perspective. Of course, he's not down in any of that technology. He thinks it's really cool, but his job is to be paranoid of stuff like that and to try to think about ways criminals are going to use that to try to attack the bank. He said it's the biggest bank in Australia, but there's larger banks in the world. But for his bank specifically, they have as much as 3,000 serious attacks every month. And of course, they're experts there, and they know how to deal with this kind of stuff. And at least according to them, they've only had one major incident in the last decade when it comes to cyber attacks. So that's actually really impressive. But it kind of goes to illustrate the point of private industry has a very different perspective on these issues, and I kind of wish there was more of that. One more thing that the conference didn't have enough of, and this is going to be a little bit of a sticky topic, A lot of people that aren't interested in international relations aren't going to care about this at all. But for me, it was something that kind of stuck out to me. There was no one. There was no major Japanese voices here, save for Session 3, which was strengthening cross-border cooperation. This was from the Vice Minister, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan. Outside of that, there wasn't a lot of Japanese voices here, and there was a lot of course, U.S. and a lot of Korean. Obviously, I think almost every single panel has someone from Korea. They're monitoring, so of course. Australia, a lot of presence from Australia, and a lot of presence from the UK, and a lot of presence from China, but only one person from Japan, and didn't really say a lot. And I don't know if that's just because of what's going on at the moment internationally. There's been kind of a cooling of relations, as it were, between the current Abe administration in Japan and the current Park Geun-hye administration here in South Korea. That kind of look at those illustrations of what happened at ASEAN Plus 3 just recently. They're supposed to have the Plus 3 meeting between China, Japan, and Korea. They do it every time there's an ASEAN Plus 3, and this time Japan didn't want to go, and it was just South Korea and China. And I kind of and then when South Korea and Japan, when the respective leaders actually did get to meet each other, they didn't greet each other, and when they sat next to each other, they didn't talk. It was just really awkward, and I wasn't sure if that might have played into this. Japan did obviously show up, and there was Japanese translation available, and there were Japanese individuals there, so there obviously wasn't animosity, but it did make me wonder why there wasn't more Japanese participation, especially since a lot of these issues are, from a Northeast Asian perspective, are three-way issues between the CJK, China, Japan, Korea. And we got a lot from China, a lot from Korea, not as much from Japan. So I kind of wish there was a little bit more of that. Hopefully it will be next time. The next one is going to be in the Netherlands in 2015. There isn't going to be a conference next year. So my big takeaways here, everyone talked about cooperation, and everyone talked about multi-stakeholdership. They don't want the government deciding everything, and they don't want it to be the Wild West where just civilians run the citizenship runs everything. They talked about it being some kind of balance between those two and private industry. I agree. If I say if there should be a lead, it's probably business and civil society, with the government kind of taking up the rear. There's going to be certain things that the government will have to do. Security is obviously one of them. But when they talked about stuff like capacity building, they kept on talking about government initiatives. And for the developed world, the government did not make these internet avenues. They didn't propagate cyberspace. It was private business. And so I would like there to be more of an emphasis on that, and there wasn't. That's okay. It's always next time. So that's kind of where we got left. Is there needs to be some form of governance, but no one trusts the other to do it. So how do we build that trust, and who should be overlooking this, especially in the international security one? The kind of the big takeaway from that is they all agreed multi-stakeholdership. They all agreed open and free, secure internet. No one could agree on who should make that happen. And I think that was that sums up this conference in a nutshell. And so hopefully between now and 2015, we kind of get the ball rolling on that. There's mention of some people's suggestions for the UN. Don't think the UN's going to help here. I don't think the UN's a good avenue for this. My personal opinion, I think it's going to start as a bilateral thing that hopefully grows into a multilateral thing. I think like free trade agreements. It's something that needs to happen on a small scale first, and then as trust gets built up and successes come from that, then they can be propagated elsewhere. And even more so Northeast Asia, I think Europe and North America has a better chance of being that example, because like I said, there's more trust already built there, and a lot of similarities already built there. So that's my impressions here of the conference. Overall, I really enjoyed it, had a great time. Hopefully you guys got a chance to see it. If you didn't, again, check out the links below. There was the chance to actually used Twitter to live tweet questions there at the conference. Most of the panels went over long, so they didn't get to any of the Twitter questions. But it was still really nice to see them try to incorporate those. And I'm really glad I got a chance to do this. If it ever happens again, I'm definitely going to try. 2016, I guess, would be the soonest. Probably not going to come to Seoul again, but if it ever does, I'm definitely going to try to take that opportunity. This was really great. This was a lot of fun. So that's just kind of my 2 cents here on the conference. Watch the videos there on the website. Tell me what you think. Try to get a dialogue going. Watch some of the videos me and James put up. See where we hit the mark and see where we were totally off and where the discussion would lead. But James, kind of big nod to us. We talked a lot about trust. We talked a lot about good examples, and we talked a lot about infrastructure being important to capacity building, and those were points that they all made. So, 18-year-old James knows what's up. Better than some of these politicians. But anyways, all right. Talk to you guys later. Love you. Bye.